Senator DeLong.
Evan Mecham has been removed as governor of Arizona.
That historic vote is our top story in this special edition of News 5.
Now, Arizona's first primetime newscast. News 5 at 9:30 with Linda Turley and Roger Downey.
Good evening. Evan Mecham had the title of governor for 15 months until the state Senate took it away from him tonight.
Mecham becomes the first governor to be removed from office in 59 years. He was smiling as he left the Senate chambers this evening, where minutes earlier he heard the lawmakers convict him on 2 of the articles of impeachment: obstruction of justice and misuse of the protocol fund.
Finish the political trial. It's as simple as that.
What do you do now, Governor?
We'll tell you tomorrow or the next day.
Do you believe you can run in the recall election?
We'll hold all of our options open.
Tonight, Evan Mecham is home. He and his attorneys must now prepare for his criminal trial scheduled to begin April 21st. Mecham faces 6 charges centering on allegations he failed to report a $350,000 loan properly during the 1986 campaign.
Here's a look at how the vote went this afternoon in the state Senate. On Article 1, the obstruction of justice charge, the Senate voted 21-9 that Mecham obstructed justice by trying to block an attorney general's investigation of an alleged death threat, and Democrat Carolyn Walker of Phoenix cast the vote, the number 20 vote, that convicted the governor on that very first article. In the second vote, the senators decided 26-4 that Mecham did misuse state funds by loaning $80,000 to his Glendale car dealership. However, the Senate voted 17-13 against imposing the so-called Dracula clause. Now, that would have prevented Mecham from ever again holding public office in Arizona.
Rose Mofford became governor tonight, but she isn't saying too much about the Senate vote. In a brief statement, she called it a difficult hour in Arizona's history and said her heart goes out to the entire Mecham family. She also said it is time to put the impeachment behind and move forward. She also said today's vote showed that our Constitution worked and that elected representatives have spoken. She added that she did not ask for this burden, but she will not shirk from the job before her. Mofford became acting governor February 5th following the House vote of the articles of impeachment against Evan Mecham.
The vote to convict Mecham took about an hour and a half this afternoon. News 5's Larry Martell has covered the impeachment trial from the beginning.
Senator Jamie Sossaman summed it up for many lawgivers when he said this was a no-win situation. The reasons for their decision seemed to cover a pretty wide spectrum, but all of them denied any political motivations.
Nothing has been presented which convinces me that Mr. Hawkins or any other member of the administration handling this matter on behalf of the governor determined in their minds that Mr. Watkins' threat against Donna Carlson represented a legitimate intent to harm Ms. Carlson.
Governor Mecham said there was a lot of lying going on. I do believe he attempted to distort the truth, in particular in his testimony relating to Lieutenant Johnson and the Thad Curtis report.
I have personally been threatened, just as other members of this court have been threatened, and I will not be part of any effort to secure jobs for lawless characters who might threaten someone else again.
However, Mr. Mecham has, by his actions, shown to the state of Arizona that he is poorly equipped to serve as the governor of our state.
I have searched my conscience and asked myself how would I react in similar situations as some of the people found themselves in on this article, and find that I have no choice but to say that Governor Mecham is guilty, at least of malfeasance.
Many of the voters in our district will feel that we have betrayed them. People who have been our friends and political allies will no longer support us. Precinct committeemen will refuse to carry our petitions. This dilemma is pitting neighbor against neighbor and causing major differences of opinion within our communities. It will be some time before my party will recover totally, and some of us will not be back again.
Article 3, misuse of the protocol fund, was a bit more definite, as were the explanations.
Governor Mecham has struck out.
Your veracity and your ethics, particularly in government, are in a state of bankruptcy. Will be up to you to choose whether to take it through Chapter 11 and work your way through it, or Chapter 7, which is permanent.
By your vote of 26 aye and 4 no,
Evan Mecham is convicted of high crimes, misdemeanors, or malfeasance in office as contained in Article 3 of the Articles of Impeachment.
Governor Mecham scored an important victory when the Senate voted not to bar him from running again. That margin, 17-13.
If Governor Mecham is convicted of the felony on Article 2, actually, that the grand jury had, he will be disqualified anyhow. And if he's innocent, then he has a right to run.
15 months after his surprise ascent to the 9th floor, Evan Mecham is surprised by his rapid descent. Still undecided as whether it means that he may not run again for another 2.5 years, whether he can run in the recall election just 44 days away, or whether there will be a recall election at all. Those decisions are in the hands of the state Supreme Court, and there's no word on when they may rule. At the Capitol, Barry Martell, News 5.
They might say it's all over but the shouting, but if that's the case tonight, there's still plenty ahead, and most of that shouting will probably be done in the courts.
There is a mountain of legal challenges facing the May 17th recall election. First and foremost, now that Mecham's been convicted, will there even be a recall election? Well, News 5's Dave Brinkers is live at the state capitol, where that's the burning question tonight. Dave, you got an answer for us?
Not yet, and I think we're going to have to wait a little while for that, Roger. As a matter of fact, the Attorney General's office is burning the midnight oil tonight to answer that question and a series of other questions related to a possible recall election. Now, earlier this year, the Attorney General's office was asked and did give its opinion over whether there should be a recall election if Mecham is convicted.
We've issued an opinion, as you know, which says the election does go forward, that there's no authority to cancel it. There is no decided precedent in Arizona on that issue, and certainly that opinion will be challenged in litigation.
And Shadegg says that'll probably be the buzzword for the next few days. Litigation, court challenges. Consider another question, the resign to run law. It says in order to run, an elected official has to be in his or her last year in office. Mofford is not. Would that keep her off the ballot? And yet another challenge. If there is a recall election, can Mecham run in this? And is his name still on the ballot?
And he is now no longer the incumbent recalled officer. That was the only legal authority he had to put his name on the ballot. That's gone. We believe his name comes off the ballot.
Finally, how long does Shadegg think we'll have to wait for answers?
I mean, if the election is to go forward, absentee ballots have to be available on April 14th. We're on a very short string here to get these questions resolved so that if the election goes forward, people who are halfway around the world and have a right to vote absentee can get a ballot and cast it in time.
Well, obviously, the clock is ticking away on this one. April 14 is only 10 days away. Now, the Attorney General's office will meet with Secretary of State Karen Osborne sometime tomorrow morning to try and move things along. Now, obviously, all this becomes a moot issue if, in fact, it is decided that there need be no recall election. Now, Roger, again, that is up for the courts to decide.
Dave, there is no question, though, who is running the state tonight, is there? It is Mofford.
It is Mofford. We asked that question of Shadegg. He said the moment that Mecham was convicted on the first article, Mofford became the governor. And there is one point of one more job to be done. She still has to be officially sworn in. We're not exactly sure when exactly that'll take place.
Okay, Dave, thank you. That's Dave Brinkers at the state capitol. If there is a recall election, will Rose Mofford's name be on it? Bud Ginhart reports that question is being considered tonight by a Superior Court judge. Bud?
That's right, Linda. Judge Frederick Martone heard arguments today from John Shadegg, the Assistant Attorney General we just saw, who argued that Mofford's name should remain on the recall ballot, and Attorney Mike Ricola, who says that it shouldn't. Ricola argued that Mofford's name shouldn't be allowed to remain on the ballot because she didn't sign a financial disclosure form, along with the nominating petitions, as specified in the election laws. But Shadegg argued that the laws governing a recall election are different than for a normal election.
That these statutes, which provide other remedies, not the remedy of taking the candidate's name off the ballot, should not be construed to take the name off the ballot where the people's will has spoken, and that recall is unique in this respect.
My contention is that general election law and laws dealing with the way people become public officers of this state all apply to recall elections.
Judge Martone indicated he'll try to issue his ruling as soon as possible, but no matter how he rules, a challenge is expected to be taken to the state Supreme Court. And as you know, the acting Secretary of State, Karen Osborne, had scheduled for the ballots to go to the printers tomorrow. The absentee ballots have to be printed by law by April the 14th, as you know. But it now appears that even if the issue of Mofford's name being on the ballot were settled tomorrow, which it won't be, the larger question of whether or not there'll be a recall election will be headed for the courts.
And we'll be watching. Thank you, Bud.
Still ahead on News 5, a look back at the charges that led to today's vote.
And the latest world news.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. The Court of Impeachment will reconvene.
Article 1, the obstruction of justice charge, was heard first. It contains several related charges accusing the governor of attempting to influence a witness, attempting to tamper with a witness, with intent to hinder prosecution, accusing him of abuse of power and violating his oath of office. The witnesses and testimony were colorful and sometimes entertaining, but the governor, the attorneys, and Justice Frank Gordon took center stage.
I can tell you, as God is my witness today, that had I broken a law that was really breaking a law, you wouldn't see me here today. I would, at one stroke of my pen, resign from this office.
Know that you got to keep your eye on the ball.
But there's something wrong here. There's something wrong in this state when you can depose the constitutionally elected officer of the state and throw the book at him in 3 different forms at the same time.
I have substantially allowed the rules to be bent, in fact, fractured in many cases.
The key players included Lee Watkins, the man who allegedly threatened a grand jury witness.
I respectfully refuse to answer any questions asserting my Fifth Amendment rights.
Donna Carlson, that witness. DPS Chief Ralph Milstead, who said the governor told him not to cooperate with the Attorney General in the investigation of the threat. The governor said he did not know the threat was a felony, did not view the threat as serious, did not tell Milstead not to cooperate with the AG. Denials continued through Article 3 testimony, which lasted barely a week. Article 3 alleges misuse of state money with subcharges including obtaining monies for private purposes by trick, violating the oath of office, and engaging in conduct constituting malfeasance or non-statutory high crimes. Mecham claimed he was not told of all the restrictions placed on a so-called protocol fund when he loaned $80,000 of that money to his car dealership.
You can spend it for any damn thing you want. Those are his words, except you can't spend it for politics or for personal living expenses.
He says the loan provided better interest for the funds than a regular bank account. But the prosecutors brought in a witness who said Mecham Pontiac was in financial trouble.
It's a fact. Unless those funds had been made from the protocol loan, Mecham Pontiac would have had an overdraft the following Wednesday in excess of $60,000.
And that was an accountant, Randall Sorensen. Testimony on Articles 1 and 3 lasted 5 weeks, and senators estimate the procedure cost the taxpayers $20,000 a day.
As you might expect, reaction to the Senate vote is coming in from around the state tonight and from those closest to the proceedings.
It would be very unusual that the court would accept this type of a case, as political in nature that it is. But of course, that avenue is open for them, and I'm sure they would attempt to explore it.
What about the state Supreme Court? Would it be unusual in that sense also?
You know, I really don't know whether that avenue would be open to them. It's possible through a special action, and I haven't been over there for so long. I don't know what's going on over there.
I think that the Senate did its duty as it saw fit, and while I may not agree with the verdict, you can't fault them for the way they went about it.
I was surprised about everything. The number of votes on the first one, the number of votes on the second one, and the lack of votes on the last one.
I feel satisfied that the interests of the state under the impeachment process have been protected. I feel relieved that this nightmare is over.
I'm glad for the state of Arizona that this is over. I don't think there was ever much doubt in my mind with the evidence that has been presented to the Senate all along that a conviction would happen.
The solid vote to convict made it a grim day for Mecham supporters. News 5's Kelly Taft reports the day of losses included, but one small victory for those behind Evan Mecham.
For Mecham supporters, the day started out amidst a party-like atmosphere. Even defense attorney Jairus Leonard danced an optimistic little jig. But the joy would soon die. As the voting began, supporters and opponents kept vigil in two separate camps, huddled around television sets and radios. As listeners kept tabs, cheers would rise up from one side or another, depending on the vote.
And I vote no.
Soon, one camp would fall silent. For supporters, the news was not good. Opponents rubbed it in as a smiling governor left the Capitol.
Most ridiculous pile of trash we've ever heard in our lives. I can't believe this. This is awful.
But the Senate's decision not to invoke the Dracula clause gave supporters some hope today. While Evan Mecham is gone for the present, they hope he isn't gone for good. No sooner was it determined there were not enough votes to disqualify Mecham from holding public office that supporters were out stumping to re-elect Mecham in the upcoming recall election. But questions remain over whether the Dracula clause includes a run in the recall.
Whether that shakes things up in the near future is going to be decided very quickly in the courts, because I think that there's going to be a decision whether or not Evan Mecham can be on that ballot since he's been impeached.
Whether it's back again as governor or something else, supporters believe Mecham could one day again serve the state of Arizona.
I'd like to see him run for United States Senate.
Kelly Taft, News 5.
Mixed reaction to the news of Mecham's conviction for people on the street, but the lion's share said they were glad to see him removed from office. News 5's Chris Cochran went to a Phoenix mall to get a sampling of opinion.
Most shoppers learned of Mecham's conviction from us or by listening to the vote count and news reports on television. It seemed all available sets were turned to the Senate proceedings. Some were surprised to hear of Mecham's conviction. Others expected it, but not necessarily on both counts.
I was very much surprised because I expected him to be convicted on one and no conviction on the second.
Senators are intelligent people, and that they weighed everything, and I think they made the right vote. I think it's very clear.
Well, I think it was long overdue, and it's nice that we finally have a decision, and I think Arizona is better off for it.
Well, I think he opens his mouth at the wrong time sometimes, but I think he got railroaded a lot.
No man is perfect. No man is perfect. Yet they have convicted him of things that he has not done.
On another topic, most of those we talked with were pleased with the senator's decision not to impose the Dracula clause. That clause would have prevented Mecham from ever running for office again.
It's kind of adding salt to the wound. I feel that he can run, but he has really hurt, himself as far as running again, that he won't get a lot of votes.
Well, I think they should leave it up to the voters to decide whether or not he should be elected again.
Well, it was their choice, but I don't think it was good because he should have.
I wouldn't vote for him again, but I feel sorry for him.
And some couldn't help thinking ahead to the May 17th recall election and the candidate they hope will soon occupy the 9th floor permanently.
Rose Mofford. I think she would be great. She has a head on her shoulders. I think she would be super.
Rose Mofford.
I thought I might go for Carolyn Warren.
Rhodes, John Rhodes.
Yes, Rose Mofford.
Chris Cochran, News 5.
Testimony in the Sam Steiger trial continued today. The former special assistant to Governor Mecham took the stand in his defense. He said he's not guilty of trying to influence the vote of a parole board member. Steiger is accused of theft by extortion after he allegedly threatened parole board members.
Coming up next on a special edition of Channel 12 News tonight, Evan Mecham has his day in court. He's found guilty and thrown out of office.
Arizona senators make the toughest decision of their political lives today. Tonight, there's concern about their safety.
And you can quit calling her acting governor Rose Mofford. She'll now be known as the governor, at least until Arizona's next challenge, the recall election. A special edition of Channel 12 News tonight is next.
News Center, 10 p.m. with Dave Patterson and Claren Scott, Dave Muncie with weather, Fred Khalil sports, and the team from News Center 10.
My heart goes out to the entire Mecham family.
Today, we have reached the end of some difficult times in Arizona.
Good evening, everyone. That was Arizona's new governor, Rose Mofford, offering her condolences to her predecessor.
Now, we will be bringing you an extended edition of News Center 10 p.m. tonight. We'll have more about Governor Mecham and how he and his family are reacting tonight.
The public and state elected officials, as you can imagine, are also reacting tonight, and we will have a series of live reports.
Well, it all started late this afternoon when senators cast their votes either for or against the governor. Mofford officially became governor when the 21-9 vote on the obstruction of justice charge was announced. 20 votes were needed for conviction. Then a short time later, the senators voted 26-4, convicting the governor of misuse of the state's protocol fund. But when it came time to decide if Governor Mecham should be prevented from ever holding public office again, the senators would not invoke the so-called Dracula clause.
Well, the guilty votes mean that Rose Mofford is now Arizona's governor, and she will take the oath of office tomorrow.
But as Becky Oliver tells us from the Capitol, there are many unanswered questions this evening. Becky?
That's right. That's because Arizona has never impeached a governor before. So now we are not only facing this conviction, but a recall election, and that is creating numerous legal hurdles. Acting Governor Rose Mofford, however, is taking it just one day at a time. A solemn Governor Mofford met briefly with reporters this afternoon to express her sentiments and ask for everyone's support.
I did not ask for this burden, but I do not shirk from the job before me. With God's help, I will not let you down. Thank you very much.
The governor left the room quickly, refusing to answer the numerous questions that remain unanswered. Tonight, however, the Attorney General's office told reporters there are 3 major legal challenges facing the state. The first involves Evan Mecham and whether or not his name comes off the recall ballot. Attorney John Shadegg says his best estimate is that it does.
We believe that the impeachment conviction extends to removing him for the balance of this term, and that even if his name were to be on the ballot, he could not be elected to serve out the balance of this term. That is, the removal would extend through 1990.
The second question is whether the recall election even goes on as planned. Shadegg says that's a tough call.
There is no decided precedent in Arizona on that issue, and certainly that opinion will be challenged in litigation.
And finally, now that Mofford is governor, the question remains, can she campaign for the office? This afternoon, that issue was being debated in Maricopa County Superior Court. Judge Frederick Martone has yet to make his ruling. Now, Judge Martone may end up making that decision sometime tomorrow, but there is little doubt that that won't be appealed to the state Supreme Court. Meanwhile, Evan Mecham has spoken very little about the Senate trial. He has remained secluded at his home in Glendale, and that is where we catch up with Mike Makela. Mike, has the governor made any kind of an appearance tonight?
Well, Becky, the former governor, has not appeared at all in front of his house tonight. After the Senate vote, he arrived here about 6:45. DPS officers dropped him off and reportedly handed him a set of house keys, shook hands, and then left.
The surprise move, Mecham arrived at the Senate this morning to view the closing arguments firsthand. The decision to be here was apparently a spontaneous one, made after a discussion with attorneys. He returned to his Glendale home early this afternoon, but abruptly left to return to the Capitol after learning the senators would in fact vote today. Immediately following the votes, Mecham went home, refusing any on-camera interviews. He did have a comment over the phone in reaction to tonight's vote. Mecham said they don't like any politics, so we finished a political trial. It's as simple as that, unquote. Later, he made this short statement over a House speakerphone.
We are assessing things, and we'll make a statement tomorrow. We're in good spirits, so nobody needs to worry about it.
Now, the former governor was originally scheduled to make an appearance before Pinell County Republicans in Apache Junction at 7 o'clock tonight, and that visit was abruptly canceled.
You mentioned that he mentioned that he might make a statement tomorrow. Any idea when he will make that?
The former governor has promised a news conference sometime tomorrow, but has not released a specific time or place.
All right. Thank you, Mike.
Thank you, Mike. Public reaction has not only been swift, some of it has been ugly. Already 5 senators, including Senators Jamie Gutierrez of Tucson and Tony West of Phoenix, have received death threats against themselves or their families.
I suspect that we may ask DPS to assign
female agent to spend the night, and I'm in the process of having the telephone number changed immediately. It's listed in the phone book.
I understand there were at least 4 others.
Yeah, there are 4 others, and I think they're basically the same type of a situation, except in this one it was a bomb, as opposed to they're going to blow, you know, the senator's head off and whatever. So that's a priority right now.
And that is Senator Gutierrez. Police officials, of course, are reacting to these reported death threats.
Well, Governor Mecham's trouble started over the Martin Luther King holiday, you may remember, some time back. Now, it's ironic that he was removed from office on the 20th anniversary of King's death. But the King holiday was not an issue today, as the Senate voted to convict the governor. As many senators announced their votes, they gave reasons for making their decisions.
Our John Kane was there throughout the trial. He was there when the votes came down, and he joins us now with a look back at this evening's historic decision. John?
From a political standpoint, and from the standpoint of senators' own political futures, this may have been the most important vote they ever cast. In explaining their votes, some senators were very blunt. They called the governor a liar.
There was no difficulty in identifying who was lying. Only one person did not tell the truth, and that was Governor Mecham.
Your veracity and your ethics, particularly in government, are in a state of bankruptcy.
Other senators disputed the defense claim that anyone who voted to convict believed Governor Mecham was an evil man.
However, Mr. Mecham has, by his actions, shown to the state of Arizona that he is poorly equipped to serve as the governor of our state.
Senator Al Runyan, the victim of a disabling stroke, cast his vote in a weak voice.
I have no choice but to say that Governor Mecham is guilty, at least of malfeasance, in this particular article, and therefore I vote aye.
A few senators who believed there was a lack of evidence in the obstruction of justice charge changed their minds when it came to the governor's use of the protocol fund.
It's clearly malfeasance, plainly wrong, a betrayal of the public trust, and abuse of official power, and I vote aye.
But on either charge, the governor's supporters were few and far between. One said the governor has made mistakes, but not impeachable mistakes.
And although I am uncomfortable with these and other actions of the governor, I am even more uncomfortable with the idea that I would in any way negate what the voters of this state have done.
And while the votes on each count were different, the results were the same.
By your vote of 21 ayes and 9 noes, Evan Mecham is convicted of high crimes, misdemeanors, or malfeasance in office as contained in Article 1 of the Articles of Impeachment.
The governor's attorneys did not rule out an appeal and expressed mixed feelings about the verdict.
I'm very in one sense relieved that this is all over. In the other sense, I certainly am sorry about the outcome.
I thought we put on a great case, and I thought we would have better results.
But the prosecutor said, in the eyes of the Senate, one of the most damaging witnesses against the governor was the governor himself.
And I think they wanted somebody to tell him, has he contradicted himself at various points in time? Has he changed his story? And personally, I think he did, and I think that hurt him.
The Senate will meet as a court of impeachment one more time on Wednesday to take care of some final matters of business. But their main work is over, Dave and Claren, and since 29 of the 30 senators are running for re-election this November, they'll wait to see how voters react to their decision today.
John, was there any sense of surprise that the Dracula clause did not pass, that that was not invoked against him?
It was a little bit of a surprise, especially since the way the votes broke down. Even some senators who voted to convict on both of the counts voted against the Dracula clause, but they felt that preventing the governor from ever holding office again, any office again, was just too severe a punishment.
Thank you, John Kane.
Thank you. Well, we now know how all the senators voted in the impeachment trial, but why did they vote the way they did?
And today's vote to impeach has raised some controversy in the Valley, as you can imagine. We'll see what folks had to say tonight next. The fate of Governor Mecham. And when it was all over this evening, they talked about why they voted the way they did. Dale Shornack has their story.
Senator Carolyn Walker says Mecham lied on the witness stand about his private financial affairs, and that's why she voted to convict on both articles.
When you tell lies around here, that just kind of, it does it for me. I mean, that just kind of erased everything he said, everything I may have thought, because all of a sudden this man doesn't tell the truth and you can't trust him on anything.
What this shows is that someone who comes into office and turns the state upside down in a year and gets involved in the various vendettas that the governor involved himself in, at some time is going to be called to account for those actions, and he was today. And
Stevens also voted to convict on both articles. Senate President Carl Knasik voted to convict on only the protocol fund.
And I've had many comments of just doing what I think should be done and the way I call it after hearing all the evidence, and that's what I did.
The largest number of senators voted to acquit Mecham on the obstruction of justice charge. Jackie Steiner was among them.
It seems to me that the governor did not have enough information at noon on Sunday when that critical conversation took place between the governor and Colonel Milstead. I just don't think he had enough information at that point to be guilty of obstruction of justice.
Most senators feel they will not win or lose much support among constituents based on how they voted, but there is some concern of a backlash.
I know that my wife got a phone call at home that there was a bomb at home, so I assume that is part of the backlash. I don't think that any member of this body is going to lose or win an election based on how they voted in this recall.
Dale Shornack, News Center 10.
Of course, there has been an incredible amount of public interest in this trial, and as you can guess, there is plenty of public comment this evening.
Diane Ryan has been checking on that, and she joins us now from the News Center. Diane?
There is plenty of public comment tonight on this subject all over the state, and it seems that those who supported Evan Mecham before the vote still do, and those who did not support the governor are happy with the outcome.
In essence, Governor Mecham is no longer governor. You know, you can still use the term governor, but he no longer officially is the governor of the state of Arizona.
At KTAR Radio in Phoenix, the calls started coming in seconds after the vote was taken in the Senate impeachment trial of Governor Evan Mecham.
I just believe that it is an injustice, and I think they should have stopped the whole waste of this money and time and let the voters decide. I think the only winners were French and Eckstein for their big fat attorney's fees.
KTAR, what do you say about all this?
Well, first of all, I'd like to say congratulations to Burton Barr and Pat Murphy. I think they've got exactly what they wanted.
There was a Judas sitting down at the Last Supper. The Judas I will describe as being Mr. Tony West.
In Prescott, the people we talked to didn't seem surprised by the outcome.
I don't feel that Governor Mecham was capable of running the office of governor in the first place.
I think they voted properly in impeaching the governor, that there was no other way to go. I deeply regret that they didn't invoke their right to forbid him from running for office.
It just seems like, the powers that be, if they want somebody out of government, they'll get them out of government. It doesn't matter what the voters say, seems like. That's, but I haven't really been paying all that much attention to it.
I kind of expected it.
In Yuma, reaction to the vote was mixed.
Just because I don't like the way he's handled the office since he's been in.
I think it's a witch hunt, personally. I think the man has been a good governor. I know that he's infuriated a lot of people.
He shouldn't have said some of the things he said.
I'm just glad to see it finally happen.
Claren and Dave, this is one historic vote in the Senate that will probably be discussed and debated for some time.
And analyzed quite a few times, too. Thank you, Diane. Well, up next, what lies ahead for Mecham, Mofford, and the state? We'll find out.
And why did the senators not bar Mecham from holding office in Arizona? We'll take a look at the Dracula Clause next, but first, here's how the senators voted on Article 3, and that is the loan from the Protocol Fund.
think that was obvious from some of the statements that were made. We have evidence of some of the members making statements outside of the Senate chamber that clearly indicated that they were biased and prejudiced.
Well, that was going in, but if I may beg that question a moment, does that mean he did not get a fair trial?
Well, you can't get a fair trial if the jury is biased. Now, did he get a fair trial in the sense that we had an opportunity to put our evidence on? Yes. But if your case is going to a jury that a third of whose mind is already made up, then you can hardly say it's a fair trial.
Do you intend to appeal now? The governor, as I recall on the radio a few days ago, said, if I'm convicted, the first thing we're going to do is appeal this to the United States Supreme Court.
I think the governor's first got to determine what his own future is, whether he wants to stay in politics, whether he wants to be active as a candidate for public office. If he does, then obviously we have to give some serious consideration to appealing. On the other hand, the fact that the Senate didn't disqualify him means that he can, in fact, run in the 1990 election. Those are things he has to decide. Those are tough decisions to make.
Well, he still faces a criminal trial, which could determine if he was found guilty, he would not be able to run in the 1990 election.
That's correct. That's also another factor.
If you were giving him advice now, I don't know if he's asked you for this kind of counsel, would you tell him to try and stay on the recall ballot?
Cameron, I'm not going to make that decision. I think it's my job to try to point out what the options are from a legal point of view. I'm certainly not going to tell this man what his political options are. If he asks my political advice, I'll give it to him, and frankly, I'm not prepared to tell you what that is at the moment. Even I need to think a little more about it.
What you're saying, though, is you think there may be some question tonight that Governor Mecham, former Governor Mecham, will try to become governor again in the recall election?
Well, I think there's some legal problems with his even considering doing that, and those would have to, we'd obviously have to be very aggressive in a lawsuit in order to get him back on the ballot, and I'm not so sure that he wants to do that.
Where do you think the trial turned against him?
I think that there were a number of the members whose minds were made up in the beginning. I don't think we changed any minds in almost 6 weeks of trial.
I've heard criticism that says Governor Mecham, as governor, was his own worst enemy. When he would speak in his own defense, he would often not know that he was telling a falsehood. Was that a mistake to put him on the stand?
Cameron, it's not a mistake. It's unfortunate that Evan Mecham is not Ronald Reagan or someone like yourself who is used to public speaking throughout their entire life. The man that's not his forte. I don't think it reflects on his honesty. I think it reflects on the fact that he's not a polished public speaker. You ask him a question, he tries to give you an honest answer. That doesn't mean that those answers are always consistent. But the inconsistencies are not because of any evil on his part. This man is basically an honest man. He's just not a polished public speaker.
Well, enough of the senators, of course, found problems with his veracity and truthfulness. Let me finally get you to react to one thing, and that is simply this, the statement. Just react to a statement. Evan Mecham is a man who believes so strongly in the righteousness and the rightfulness of his positions that he doesn't know if he's telling a lie.
False.
All right. Jairus Leonard, thanks very much for joining us tonight.
Thank you, Cameron.
And News Channel 3's coverage will continue in just a moment. We'll have more news. And right now, though, we're going to make a switch back to Heidi.
And Cameron, one final note tonight about this memorable day in Arizona history. For many, it is a day filled with irony. You may remember the French report, which led to the House impeachment of Governor Mecham. That was released on January 15th, Martin Luther King Jr.'s birthday. And today, on the 20th anniversary of the assassination of Dr. King, the Senate has convicted Governor Mecham on 2 articles of impeachment. While neither account was related to the rescission of the Martin Luther King holiday, it was the King controversy that first brought turmoil to the Mecham administration.
We'll have more news in just a moment, but first, the Arizona senators who voted against disqualifying Governor Mecham from ever holding public office again.
buck us, we will get you. And I think that that's what they've done, and I don't believe that Governor Mecham was the horrible creature that they tried to paint him as.
But the day's vote left others with varied opinions, some of sympathy, but most with relief.
I think whatever has to be done to have him out of office should be done. I just think that the state has gone through enough. It's been unproductive, and we are crippled nationwide. We've been embarrassed.
I have not been a strong supporter of the governor, and I hope that this puts this chapter behind us.
I think that what was done had to be done, and but it's a tough call. It really is.
And the calls are still coming in here at KTAR and Kent and Patty. They'll be taking calls until 1 o'clock this morning.
Any idea, Nancy, which way the callers are going as far as the recall is concerned?
As I understand it, they've been split right down the middle on the recall, whether there should be a recall, whether the governor or the former governor should be on the ballot. And by the way, they are simulcasting this show in Salt Lake City. And as I understand it, the reaction's been very much the same way in Salt Lake City.
Interesting. Thank you, Nancy.
Sure.
Still to come on this special edition of Channel 12 News tonight, a closer look at the charges that brought an end to the Mecham administration.
And what did Evan Mecham accomplish during his short term on the 9th floor? We'll take a look next. Stay with us. Vote in the impeachment trial came 5 full weeks after testimony began. The first 3 weeks was spent on Article 1, the so-called obstruction of justice charge.
With more on that, Rick DeBrule is standing by live at the Capitol.
Well, there's no question, Kent and Patty, that Article 1 was the flashier of the two articles. It had everything from death threats to sex. But for the senators, the battle was sifting through to the heart of the charge. Did Governor Mecham obstruct justice?
In describing the situation to the governor, did you ever
to focus on the facts? With Article 1, that sometimes got pretty difficult. At issue, did Governor Mecham obstruct justice by telling DPS Director Ralph Milstead not to cooperate with the Attorney General's investigation into an alleged death threat? It was former prison construction chief Lee Watkins that allegedly made the threat against ex-Mecham aide Donna Carlson during a conversation with Peggy Griffith.
And he said, there are friends of the governor's that is very angry at her, and if she doesn't keep her goddamn mouth shut, that she will take a long boat ride.
Griffith, Mecham's director of women's services, says she tried to tell the governor about the threat, but when she couldn't get in to see him, she told one of his DPS bodyguards, Frank Martinez. He then told Lieutenant Bo Johnson, who took it to the governor.
And you do recall saying it was a possible felony?
Yes, sir. Did you hear the words felony?
Absolutely not. I've been shocked to hear him say that.
Within hours, Attorney General Bob Corbin's office was involved. An investigation was underway. On Sunday, 2 days later, DPS Director Ralph Milstead called the governor to tell him what was happening.
His reaction was, well, if you want my permission to talk to the Attorney General, you can't have it. The answer is no.
Did you put that in your report?
Yes, sir, I did.
You said you couldn't recall whether you made those statements or not. Isn't that correct?
Oh, I said I didn't think I made them, and I certainly didn't recall making them.
But the impeachment trial was nowhere near that simple. Defense attorneys brought Milstead's alleged lover, Christina Johnston, to the stand. But Judge Gordon ruled Milstead's sex life was not going to be part of the trial. Then there was talk of lasers, lie detectors, mutiny, and Lee Watkins muted testimony.
On the advice of counsel, Mr. French, I'm asserting my Fifth Amendment rights.
There was no smoking gun in Article 1, no tape-recorded conversations, no hidden memos. In the end, it came down to one man's word against another, Ralph Milstead's against Evan Mecham's. For the senators, that was apparently enough.
Convicted in Article 1 by a vote of 21-9 that came late this afternoon. Many of the senators said that vote surprised them, although a lot of those senators said they were not surprised by the fact that the governor was convicted on the second article, or the second charge. That's technically Article 3. What did surprise them was the fact that it came along so quickly and that the vote was so high, 26-4. Marlene Galan has more on the story behind the protocol fund.
Donna Carlson, a former top aide to the governor, said when she found out about the $80,000 loan, she warned former Chief of Staff Jim Coulter that people could go to jail.
I said, those are public monies. What if somebody asked for an accounting of the fund?
Did you say anything else to him about that subject at that time?
I asked him if the money had gone to the tabloid, and he said no. And I said, well, was it for the governor's personal use? And he said yes.
Coulter testified he warned the governor lending the money to his dealership would be politically unwise, but he said there was no effort to cover up the loan.
You certainly were not anxious that the general public become aware of this loan, were you?
No, I did not broadcast it.
Coulter also testified he thought the loan was a good investment. After argument from the defense, the prosecution called an accountant to the stand who testified that without the $80,000 loan, Mecham's Pontiac dealership bank account would have been overdrawn by $66,000. Later, a real estate lender testified Mecham Pontiac was getting itself deeper in debt, owing more than $3 million when it borrowed the money. The defense's first witness, a vice president of Valley National Bank, testified that he would have lent Mecham the $80,000 without collateral, but later changes his mind when prosecutor Paul Eckstein showed him a letter on Mecham's slow loan repayment. The governor's son and general manager of Mecham Pontiac, Dennis Mecham, testified the family's business was very strong when it borrowed the $80,000. Dennis Mecham said the accountant and banker don't know anything about the auto sales business and drew inaccurate conclusions from the bank records. As testimony on Article 3 continued, tensions rose. House Prosecutor William French compared Mecham's loan to a bank officer embezzling money.
I have to make a statement, if I may, Mr.
Assume.
French.
Let me
Can
proceed with a question.
I have to make
There's
a statement.
no question before you.
I have to make a statement,
Governor,
Mr.
there is no
French.
question before you.
I
Your
resent
counsel is
so
straight.
highly the word embezzlement in my presence, sir, and that was characterized and done before, and I'm insulted by it, and I have to tell the people of this state and this body I'm insulted by it.
When defense expert witness Robert LeCure took the stand, sparks flew again. Feuding between the witness and prosecutor caused Justice Gordon to lose his patience.
Private side of the statute.
Mr. LeCure, Mr. LeCure, just a minute.
Yes, sir.
See this thing that I've got in my hand?
The prosecution then called rebuttal witness Lee Chrisman to the stand. Chrisman, a former bookkeeper at Mecham Pontiac, accused both Governor Mecham and his son Dennis of lying about the financial status of Mecham Pontiac. Father and son blamed Chrisman for making costly mistakes.
Yes, when I heard Dennis lie.
You would have testified whether you were subpoenaed or not.
Once again, the governor was convicted on that charge today by a vote of 26-4. All he needed was to be convicted on one of those charges, Article 1 or Article 3, and he would have been out of office. As it turned out, he was convicted on both of them, sealing his fate as governor of Arizona. Ken, Patty?
Okay, thank you very much, Rick.